I'm Amy Goodman. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Europe is at crossroads in history as leaders across Europe held an emergency summit in London Sunday, 2 days after an unprecedented Oval Office public clash in the White House between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and both President Trump and Vice President Vance. After the disastrous meeting, Vice President Vance was met by hundreds of protesters in Waitsfield, Vermont, where he went for a family ski trip. And emergency rallies for a fair peace in Ukraine were held in New York and Los Angeles. Zelensky had traveled to the White House to sign a deal giving the United States partial control over Ukraine's rare earth minerals. But the deal imploded following this dramatic televised press conference where President Trump accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III after Zelensky insisted Ukraine could only back a Russia peace deal if it included security guarantees from the United States. The meeting ended with Trump and Vance openly criticizing Zelensky. We begin today's show with an extended portion of the clash.
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014
2014.
is
Well, 2014.
Yeah. So
I was,
he killed,
I was not here.
Yeah, but,
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire, all of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract, yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
Do we have problems?
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
Yeah,
you're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
What do you think
You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all respect to your
far
country.
more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
even
entire
today,
meeting, you said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait
answer?
a minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't been
in this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
That was with Obama. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
An extended excerpt of Friday's public clash with news reporters looking on, a White House meeting in the Oval Office between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and both President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. AP and Reuters were excluded from the press pool while a reporter with Russia's state-owned news agency TASS was there. The White House later said they didn't know how he'd been allowed in, that he was removed as soon as they were notified of his presence. Shortly after this exchange, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz asked Zelensky to leave the White House without signing any deal. Trump's treatment of Zelensky shocked many in Washington and around the world. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski said, quote, "I'm sick to my stomach as the administration appears to be walking away from our allies and embracing Putin, a threat to democracy and U.S. values around the world." Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested President Zelensky may need to step down following the White House clash. Meanwhile, leaders in Europe held an emergency summit in London Sunday where British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who warmly greeted Zelensky outside 10 Downing Street and called for a coalition of the willing to be formed to support Ukraine if a peace deal is reached. For more, we're joined here in New York by Kenneth Roth, visiting professor at the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, served for nearly 30 years as the executive director of Human Rights Watch. His new book is just out. It's titled Righting Wrongs: 3 Decades on the Front Lines Battling Abusive Governments. His recent piece for The Guardian headlined, "Even Trump can be cajoled into doing the right thing. You just have to know which buttons to press." Ken Roth, welcome back to Democracy Now! Thanks so much for joining us. First, your response to this public clash.
Well, Amy, it's great to be back. I think it's important to note that the segment you just showed was preceded by 40 minutes of normal, reasonable conversation. And as this, weird press conference, because it was supposed to be, a heads of state meeting, but it was all televised, as it was drawing to an end, that's when J.D. Vance stepped in and tried to sabotage things. And, who knows what he was thinking. Partly it was, speaking to the media, remember me, I'm the guy who you ignore when you focus on Elon Musk. Partly it was his long-standing hostility to Ukraine's democracy. He favors Putin, he favors the neo-Nazi German AfD party. But when he started clashing with Zelensky said, well, what do you mean just diplomacy? What do you mean we don't need security guarantees? We have this long history of Putin violating various ceasefire guarantees and basically using the pause to rearm and reinvade. And that's what everybody fears now. And Vance had no answer to that. So he got into attack dog mode. Why aren't you more thankful? And that, it's embarrassing, frankly, as an American, to see the 2 leading American officials behaving in such a juvenile fashion when these are life and death matters for not only Ukrainian people, but for Ukrainian democracy and potentially European democracy. But this is how policy is being made. And I think the real challenge now is, can this be salvaged? What is on the table is, not just a temporary ceasefire deal, but will the United States provide aerial backup for the European peacekeeping force it would put on the ground to prevent Putin from reinvading down the road? It's a very reasonable request. Trump has refused to agree to that. He just, it's on the table repeatedly, and he doesn't say yes. That's what Zelensky was trying to secure, and that's what Vance and then ultimately Trump sabotaged.
Now, of course, Trump also has long-term resentments of President Zelensky. That's why he was bringing up Hunter Biden's laptop, et cetera. Yeah. Involving his first impeachment. No,
precisely. I mean, he was impeached because of Trump's utterly improper effort to persuade Zelensky to investigate Hunter Biden when Trump was facing a potential challenge from Biden. So this is how American foreign policy is being made. And, understandably, the world is appalled. And I think the real question is, how do we salvage the situation? And as I wrote in that Guardian piece that you just mentioned, I do think that there's a way of salvaging disaster from all of this, and that is to really look at what Trump cares about, which is that, and he said this repeatedly during this press conference, he is a master deal maker. He spent his entire life making deals. And if we can show that, a deal that is just a ceasefire without security guarantees will be a bad deal. It'll be just a matter of time before Putin then tries to reinvade and take Kyiv. Trump has the potential of having a legacy as being the Neville Chamberlain of the 21st century, a man who appeased Putin and made a horrible deal. And I don't think he wants to be remembered for that. So I think that that's our best route forward, is to stress that, much as Trump dislikes Zelensky, much as Trump doesn't want to, get the U.S. military involved anyplace, this is a matter where the U.S. is being asked to take a pretty minimalist stance. And Trump's refusal will utterly blow up this deal that he wants to make.
So we'll see what happens, because Zelensky went from not signing the deal, because Trump took it off the table, of rare earth minerals, and we'll talk about that in a minute, to London, where an emergency meeting was called of European leaders. There's even some discussion of possibly Macron, Starmer, and Zelensky coming back to the White House at some point. I want to go to British Prime Minister Keir Starmer speaking Sunday after the meeting with European leaders to discuss a peace proposal that would end Russia's war in Ukraine.
We will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
He's standing at a podium that says, securing our future. He talks about a coalition of the willing, which ominously harkens back to the Iraq War, which you write about in Righting Wrongs, which was the U.S. forcing a number of countries to support its war on Iraq, interestingly.
Yeah. Well, look, the coalition of the willing is all that they can do. If they do a European Union force, they're subject to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's veto. So that's just not an option, because Orban is in there as a pawn for Putin. But Starmer is absolutely right. Putting European peacekeepers on the ground won't be enough, because Putin will attack them. And they feel that they need a U.S. backstop. Now, Trump's answer was, well, what do you mean we're going to have this mineral deal and we'll have American miners on the ground? What more do you need? That's your security guarantee. And this, utterly ignores what Putin wants, because he could care less about, more minerals or a little bit more territory. He wants to snuff out Ukraine's democracy, because this represents a danger for Putin. This is a major Slavic country right on the border of Russia, many Russian speakers. It represents the democracy that Russians don't have, and that's why he wants to get rid of it.
But it could be that this U.S. rare earth minerals deal is more of a threat to Putin than Zelensky. The U.S. really being interested there because of iPhones, because of Tesla cars, batteries, etc. That the U.S. controlling this part of Ukraine would be a real threat to Putin.
I don't think that's what matters so much. In other words, Putin already is saying, we'll give you some of the rare earths from the occupied part of Ukraine where Russians in control. Minerals can be sold by whoever owns them. What this fight is really about is, does Ukraine maintain its democracy or not? And that's what Putin wants to snuff out. And without these US-backed European security guarantees, he's going to succeed. And that's why this fight in the White House, was not just this juvenile food fight that Vance and Trump turned it into. This was really a life and death matter for Ukraine's democracy.